Hey everybody! In today's video, I'm going to be watercoloring this sweet little bird with some new to me water media pens, as well as showing you some other projects from Concord 9th's fabulous October release, which is live today. And I'll link you to all the products I'm using, like this amazing Songbird stamp set. It's like they designed this little bird for me and for no line coloring. I stamped the bird in Fadeout ink. I know you can barely see this here, but that's actually the idea. And I'm going to use the packaging of the stamp set for these fun new pens. Now, I saw a demo of these pens at the Artisan Expo in Santa Fe, where I was a few weeks ago. This is the first time I'd actually been to the expo. I'd been trying to get there for years, and oh my gosh, now I really regret all the years that I didn't go because it was amazing. We got to buy directly from manufacturers. I had 4 days of watercolor classes, and I was in Santa Fe, which it really doesn't get better than that, ever, under any circumstances. To start with, I'm going to treat this like a traditional watercolor. I am going to wet the entire bird just with clean water. But you'll notice I have my Arteza water brush nearby. And that is because I have a thing about only using my Escoda Versatile brushes, my good watercolor brushes, for actual watercolor pigment and not for anything that is an ink or a dye. I'm just weird like that. I'm not saying that's what you should do. I'm just telling you why I'm actually painting with a water brush. Now, one of the reasons that this is a good idea will become evident later in this video. So while the bird is wet, it makes it really easy for me to blend these two colors, this yellow and the red. And you'll notice even after the ink has somewhat dried, I'm still able to manipulate it on the paper and soften the lines where the two colors meet. This is not possible with all water-based markers, and so it's always kind of the first test that I do when I'm testing out a medium. And I really like this one. I want to talk to you about bird colors, or really the colors of anything that you're painting. What I would like you to do is forget about the real world when you're painting. I am 100% certain there's not a bird that's like blue and purple and hot pink and yellow, or if there is, maybe there is, or maybe there's been a bird that's been photoshopped like that. The point is, I do not care. I like to paint with colors that make me happy, and I want you to paint with colors that make you happy. So I'm using my Holy Trinity plus a little bit of violet and a little bit of gold. So those are the colors I like. So my bird's going to be pretty to me. And that's it. It's not going in the Smithsonian. I'm just trying to make a pretty bird. That's it. So I will do his tail a little bit separately because I wanted his body to be that yellow gold color. And I wanted his tail to be a little bit darker. So I kind of let that dry while I was painting the body, and then I'll go back, just so those two don't bleed together too much. And I can have a nice smooth line, but still have a kind of a dividing line between his body and his tail. It was crazy taking watercolor classes in Santa Fe because everything dried instantly. It was sort of like being on a game show where like things that you know should work in real life didn't work there because we had to kind of pick up the pace. And actually, in one of my classes, we did a speed painting exercise that was amazing for kind of loosening you up. Now here I have the gray. You're going to see me using the gray and the black. These are both really good sort of neutral shadow colors that I ended up liking a lot. Another topic I wanted to talk to you about today is what you see here, that I had kind of a rough edge as the water dried on the edge of that bird. Don't worry about that until the very end of your painting, until that section is dry. A lot of people see that especially using cold pressed watercolor paper, and they say, oh my God, my ink is jaggedy, or my watercolor's jaggedy, or the sky is falling, or everything's broken and I have to get off the internet now. None of that is true. What happens is the paper is textured. Oh, here's where I found what I was talking about earlier. There's a little sparkle on my bird that you can see. And that's because I was using a sparkly medium with this pen. Another reason not to use your good watercolor brushes. Anyway, what I was saying is that because of the nature of cold pressed watercolor paper and the texture, the pigment, the ink, whatever, will find its way into those little crevices and it'll create some rough edges while your medium is wet. That can all be fixed by using a wet medium on a dry piece of paper. So just wait until the very end and go around the edges with the same colors that you use. You don't want to use a darker color because then it'll look sort of outlined and cartoony. But you can fix all those things at the end. Now with this medium in particular, because it is so blendable after it's down, you can fix it for a long time with just a wet brush and dry paper. So just remember to do things in the reverse order. When you start watercolor painting, you need to have wet paper and you need to put wet paint onto the paper to get it, your background to blend smoothly, etc. But then at the end, when you're adding details, when you're fixing rough edges, you would paint wet pigment onto dry paper. And that's what gives you the crispness and smoothness that you can't get while you're painting wet on rough paper. So don't freak out if you see those little lines. Nothing's wrong. You haven't done anything wrong, and there's nothing wrong with your medium. Now you see I've switched to the black. There's not much difference between the gray and the black. They're basically the same color value, so they're both very neutral. But the black is just a wee bit darker. It gives me a little definition. It's really good for deep, dark shadows. And you know how much I love deep, dark shadows at the end. So I will add what I call selective detail to both the bird and the branches. If you go around a no-line watercolor image and you add back all the details, every single feather, every line of the stamp image, then you have no longer done no-line watercolor. If you go back and add selective details, just every other little vein in a leaf or every other little mark on this branch or just the marks on the bottom, you preserve that fluid watercolor look, and then you also draw the viewer's eye to the more realistic parts of your painting. Now, these pens will not dry out even if you leave the cap off for a while, which is becoming kind of my favorite thing about pens because I've noticed in my old age that I leave the caps off a lot of things, notably my glue. Basically, my morning routine is waking up and yelling out a cuss word when I see that my glue has been open on my desk all night. That's just kind of how I'm rolling right now. But I also do it with pens, and like the zebra pens that I showed you in a previous video, I'll link you to that. These have an extended cap off time. That is a good quality in a watercolor style pen. You can do all sorts of things with these pens. You can do calligraphy. It looks like they have a very firm nib when you see me coloring on this plastic, but in fact it's slightly flexible. So there are some lettering videos out there with these pens. They're a little bit firmer than most lettering brush markers, but at the same time they do flex, so you can use them for that. The set that I got that they had at the show was the set of 12, which I think is the most colors that they have. And the watercolor that I saw the girl doing at the booth, and dear girl at the booth, if you're out there and somehow you see this video, your art that you were working on there was one of the most beautiful things that I saw at that show. She got the colors really, really pale, just watered them down, just like I'm doing here on a piece of plastic, and then picked them up and put them on there. and her work was just unbelievable. So dear pen girl, I love you. I hope I see you again someday. I'm putting back some feather detail with the black, again, very selectively. Some places I'm going really dark, and some places I'm giving just the suggestion of a feather. I do want everybody to know that this is a bird, so I do have to put just a little bit of realism back in the image. But the way this bird is sitting sort of gives you the license to do what I've done here, which is come up with some weird, wacky colors if you want to, and I encourage you to do that. This is just an imaginary bird. National Geographic is not going to come after you for your pink bird head. And if they do, I'll be ready. Don't worry. You can give them my cell phone number. So there's my little songbird today. I love this release just like I love everything they do. And I have a little walkthrough of it as well as these two other projects on my blog today. So come take a peek. Thanks so much for watching.